Hi there, this is Jacob Nash, Algebra Lessons, and it's Unit 4, Lesson 5, on grouping, or factoring by grouping, or by Gray's common factor. So, I already talked about in the last lesson when to use it, so you need to watch that. But you could use it in this case because each term can divide by something. In this case, they can all divide by 3. But we'll look at another example where there's 4 terms, and they all can't divide by the same thing, but 2 of the terms can by something and 2 by the other. So we'll look at that. But for this one, we can see that each term, we have 3 terms. So remember what that means? Trinomial. And in this trinomial, it would be a quadratic because of the power. And in each of these terms, we see 3x squared, 9x, and 27, and they can all divide by 3. As a review, if sometimes, let's say that this was a 3, this was a 2, and then there was an x here, you could divide by x also. And just as a review, there's adding exponents, well, if you have x squared plus x squared, you get 2x squared. So the exponent stays the same. If you have 3x squared minus 2x squared, you just get x squared. So if you add or subtract 2 terms that have a exponent on it, they stay the same. Ugh, kind of hard to say. But if you multiply and divide them, that's when it changes. So if you multiply 2 things, like if you had x squared times x squared, you would get x to the 4th power. Now we didn't multiply the exponents, but when the terms are multiplied, the exponents add. So this isn't a very good example because adding and multiplying would be the same thing. So let's pretend like those were 3's. So you might think they would be to the 9th, but it's actually to the 6th because you add the exponents, not multiply them. And then when you divide them, let's say we have x to the 5th divided by x to the 3rd, you subtract them. So you don't get x to the 5/3. That would be terrible. You get x squared. There are certain situations where you multiply and divide them. You can multiply exponents if you have something like this. X to the 5th to the 7th. If you had something like that, then you would get x to the 35th. And then I guess, well, it just gets really complicated, but you don't have to do that in this case. But just as a reminder, in case there was an x, this wouldn't be, you wouldn't have to divide the exponents, you just would subtract them. So, but that's not the case. What you do, since we divide by 3, we put the 3 off to the side, and then something's going in the parentheses. 3 divided by 3 is just 1, so that kind of cancels out. And then x squared stays the same. 9 divided by 3 here is 3. X stays the same. And then 27 divided by 3 is 9. So this is the factored form. Now, I told you in the last video that you sometimes have to use more than one of those options to factor. In this case, you would need to see if you could use the add-multiply technique, which I'll talk about more in the next video. But I'm not gonna. This could be simplified more, but I'm not completely sure. I would have to see to solve it out, but I'm not going to because I'm going over that in the next lesson. So just take that into consideration. You have to know all the different techniques to use. And sometimes if you can't use any of them, you have to use the quadratic formula, but you can only do that if it's in a form like this. So that's how you can use the Gray's common factor, but you sometimes have to do something called grouping. So that should have been reviewed kind of from quadratics, but there's a different one that you can use. So let's say we had this. Oh, wait a second. Sorry. Let's say we had x cubed plus 6x squared minus 5x minus 30. Okay. We can see that there's nothing that can divide by all these terms because some have x's, some don't. And the only thing you can really divide by is 1, and that's pointless because that would make it the same. But we can see that there's something you can divide by each of these terms. So you have to group them. So you're kind of separating this. And we see that for these two terms, x cubed plus 6x squared, no number can be divided by them, but you can divide by x squared because there's an x squared on both. And remember, I already said when you divide, we have x cubed divided by x squared, you just get x because you do the exponents 3 minus 2 equals 1, and when there's 1, there's no exponent shown. So we have x squared because that's what we divided by, and then I just said that turns out to be x, and then this cancels out, so you get 1. X plus 1. 1, what's wrong with me? Sorry, 6. I don't know why I did that. Sorry. Because nothing divided by for the number, so it stays the same. Over here, you can't divide by x because there's no x on the 30, but you can divide by -5 on both. So -5, you get x because that nothing changed with x. And -30 divided by -5 is plus 6. Now, here's how you know if you did something right. Is this the highlighter? I guess this is the highlighter. So you can see that these two things are the same. They have to be. If they're not the same, then that means that it is not groupable. So, there you go. Now what you do, you take this x plus 6, and you have to multiply it by the two things that are left out of it. So that means that it's going to be x squared minus 5. That's what we get. So let's see. Well, you might be able to, if you're asked to solve, you would need to solve for x, but there's nothing further you could do for factoring, so that would be the answer. That is how you group. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video about how you can use the, what was it? Oh yeah, add multiply technique.